You know what's funny? When I was younger, I thought confidence had a sound. I thought it sounded loud, fast, certain, like the guy who always had an answer, the person who never backed down, the one who could win an argument before the other person even finished their sentence. And honestly, for a long time, I wanted to be that guy.
I think a lot of people do, especially when you're young. You assume the strongest person in the room is the one taking up the most space.
Exactly. The loudest laugh, the strongest opinions, the quickest comeback, the biggest personality, that's who gets noticed. And when you're young, being noticed feels a lot like being powerful.
That's such a dangerous confusion, because attention and strength aren't the same thing.
Not even close. But it took me years to learn that. Actually, it took one conversation, one very uncomfortable conversation.
Those are usually the ones that teach us the most.
Unfortunately, yes. I remember it like it happened yesterday. I was sitting across from someone I respected. We disagreed about something. I don't even remember what anymore. Which is funny because at the time, it felt incredibly important. You know how some disagreements feel like life or death situations? Then 6 months later, you can't even remember what you were fighting about?
Every family holiday I've ever attended.
That's exactly what happened. The calmer they became, the more frustrated I became. It was like trying to start a fire in the rain. Nothing would catch, no matter what I said, no matter how passionate I got, no matter how convincing I thought I was. They stayed exactly the same.
Oh, I know that type. The people who somehow make you more emotional by refusing to become emotional.
Exactly. Anyway, I was determined to prove my point, talking fast, interrupting, defending every detail, making sure they understood why I was right. And the entire time, they just sat there, listening, calm, relaxed, almost annoyingly relaxed.
And I bet that drove you crazy.
Completely. Because I kept waiting for the reaction. I wanted resistance. I wanted pushback. I wanted proof that my words were having an effect. But they never gave it to me. And then something weird happened. Halfway through the conversation, I stopped hearing them and started hearing myself.
What do you mean?
I started noticing my own energy, my own tension, my own need to be right. It was like seeing myself from the outside for the first time. And honestly, I didn't like what I saw
Wow, that's one of those sentences that hurts a little.
because it's true. And when that conversation ended, I walked away realizing something that completely changed how I think about strength. The strongest person in the room wasn't the person speaking the most, it was the person who never lost control of themselves. Pause. And that's what I want to talk about today. Not confidence, not charisma, not influence. Something deeper, something quieter, something most people completely overlook. Calm, real calm, not the fake version, not pretending not to care, not acting unbothered because it's trendy. I'm talking about genuine inner stability, the kind that changes the energy of a room without saying a word.
You know what's interesting? The older I get, the more I realize calm people have a completely different relationship with life.
How so?
Most people react to life. Calm people respond to life. And those sound similar until you really think about them.
That's a huge difference. A reaction is automatic, a response is intentional.
Exactly. One comes from impulse, the other comes from awareness. And honestly, awareness is becoming rare.
Very rare. Because we're living in a world that rewards reaction. Everything is designed to provoke us. News, social media, politics, algorithms, advertisements. Everybody wants your attention. And the easiest way to get attention is through emotion.
Especially outrage. Outrage is like jet fuel on the internet.
It really is. A thoughtful opinion gets ignored. A dramatic opinion goes viral. A calm discussion gets buried. A public argument gets millions of views. And after a while, people start confusing emotional intensity with importance.
That's so true. Just because something makes you emotional doesn't mean it's important. And just because something is important doesn't mean you need to become emotional.
Exactly. And here's where it gets interesting. Because calm people often get misunderstood. People look at them and think, they don't care. They aren't passionate. They aren't strong. They aren't confident. But sometimes the opposite is true. Sometimes what looks like weakness from a distance is actually self-control up close.
Say that again. Because that's good.
What looks like weakness from a distance is often self-control up close. People don't see the internal work. They don't see the discipline. They don't see the decision being made every second. The decision not to react, the decision not to escalate, the decision not to hand over control of their emotions.
It's kind of like a tree.
Go on.
A tree doesn't look impressive because it's standing still. You don't notice it. You don't stop your car and think, wow, look at that tree not moving.
Fair point.
But then a storm comes, and suddenly the thing that looked ordinary becomes remarkable because everything else is bending, everything else is breaking, everything else is being thrown around, and somehow the tree stays rooted. That's when you discover where the strength was hiding.
I love that. Because that's exactly how calm works. Most people don't notice it until pressure shows up. Anybody can stay composed when life is easy. Anybody can be patient when nothing is challenging them. Anybody can be kind when everyone agrees with them. The real test comes when things stop going your way, when you're stressed, when you're tired, when someone criticizes you, when someone misunderstands you, when life becomes inconvenient. That's when calm becomes visible. Always.
The people who are hardest to manipulate are almost always the calmest people.
100%. Because manipulation depends on reaction. If I can control your emotions, I can influence your behavior.
Exactly. And a lot of people don't even realize that's happening.
No. Most people think manipulation is dramatic, but usually it's subtle. It's knowing which button to push, which insecurity to trigger, which fear to activate, which emotion to provoke. And once the emotion takes over, logic leaves the room.
That's scary.
It is. Which is why calm can make people uncomfortable. Because calm disrupts the script. The usual playbook stops working. The reaction they expected never arrives. And suddenly, they don't know what to do.
That's such a weird thing to think about, because we normally associate calm with making people comfortable. But sometimes calm does the opposite.
Absolutely. Especially for people who are used to controlling situations through emotion. Think about it. Anger is predictable. Defensiveness is predictable. Panic is predictable. But calm is difficult to control.
It's like trying to grab water. The harder you squeeze, the less you hold.
Exactly. And that's why calm confidence feels different from performative confidence. Performative confidence needs attention. Real confidence doesn't. Performative confidence needs validation. Real confidence doesn't. Performative confidence wants to be seen. Real confidence simply exists.
I think that's why truly calm people feel powerful. They're not trying to convince anyone.
Exactly. And maybe that's the first sign of real strength. The less you need to prove it, the more likely you actually have it. Pause. And here's the thing most people don't realize. Calm isn't something you're born with. At least not usually. Most calm people weren't calm 20 years ago. Most calm people have stories. They've been embarrassed. They've overreacted. They've said things they regret. They've made mistakes. They've learned lessons the hard way, and eventually life teaches them something we're going to talk about next. Because the biggest benefit of calm isn't confidence, it isn't influence, it isn't respect. It's something even more valuable than all of those. And once you understand it, you'll never look at calm people the same way again.
Okay, so you left us hanging. You said the biggest benefit of calm isn't confidence. It isn't respect. It isn't influence. So what is it?
Clarity, without question.
Really? That's the first thing that comes to mind?
Every time, because confidence is great, respect is great, influence is useful, but clarity changes everything. And here's why. Most people don't lose opportunities because they're not smart enough. They lose opportunities because they stop thinking clearly when emotions get involved.
That's painfully accurate.
Think about the worst decision you've ever made. Seriously, take a second. Was it made from a place of calm, or was it made from a place of fear, anger, loneliness, ego, panic?
You're not going to like my answer.
I already know your answer, because it's the same answer most people have. The worst decisions usually happen when emotions take over.
That's true. I've never ruined anything important because I was too calm. I've ruined things because I reacted too quickly.
Exactly. Nobody wakes up after a peaceful morning walk and accidentally destroys a relationship. Nobody meditates for 30 minutes and then sends an angry text they'll regret for 6 months. The damage usually happens when emotions become louder than wisdom.
Wow, that's good. The damage usually happens when emotions become louder than wisdom.
Exactly. Most problems don't need an immediate reaction. They need a thoughtful response. And those are very different things.
That's such an important distinction, because feelings create urgency. Reality often doesn't.
Because it's true. And here's what most people miss. Pressure creates the illusion of urgency. Suddenly, everything feels like it needs an immediate response. A message comes in, you feel criticized, your heart rate goes up, and your brain says, respond right now. But most situations aren't emergencies, they just feel like emergencies.
Can I tell you the most expensive sentence I've ever said?
Now I'm curious.
Let me tell you what I really think.
Oh no.
Every disaster in my life seems to start with those words.
That's because people confuse honesty with immediacy. They think every thought deserves expression, every emotion deserves a microphone, every feeling deserves a public statement. But maturity teaches you something different.
What's that?
Not every feeling deserves a decision, and not every emotion deserves a reaction. Sometimes the wisest thing you can do is wait.
That's so hard, though.
Of course it is, because waiting feels passive. But often it's the most active thing you can do. You're protecting clarity. You're protecting perspective. You're giving wisdom time to catch up with emotion. Pause. And honestly, some of the best decisions I've ever made came after I waited 24 hours. Not because the problem changed, because I changed.
That's such a good point. Sometimes the situation isn't different the next day. You are.
Exactly. The emotion settles. The ego relaxes. The story in your head loses its grip. And suddenly you can see what's actually happening, not what you feared was happening.
You know what this reminds me of?
What?
That old saying, never make permanent decisions based on temporary emotions.
I love that. Because people do it all the time. They quit careers during bad weeks, end relationships during bad days, destroy friendships during bad moments, all because they assumed today's emotion would still make sense tomorrow.
And often it doesn't.
Exactly, because emotions are weather. not climate.
Wow. Explain that.
A storm doesn't tell you what the entire year looks like. It tells you what today looks like. And emotions are the same way. Just because you're angry today doesn't mean you're an angry person. Just because you're scared today doesn't mean you're weak. Just because you're hurt today doesn't mean your life is broken. But people treat temporary feelings like permanent truths. And that's where clarity disappears.
Can we talk about something else calm protects? Because I think there's another one.
There is. And honestly, it might be even more important.
What is it?
Dignity.
Oh, that's a big word.
It is. And we don't talk about it enough. Because most people focus on winning. Very few people focus on dignity.
What's the difference?
Winning is external. Dignity is internal. Winning is about the outcome. Dignity is about the person you become during the process.
That's powerful.
Think about it. How many people have won an argument and hated themselves afterward?
Probably millions.
Exactly. You got the last word. You proved your point. You embarrassed the other person. You won. Congratulations. But then you go home, and now you have to live with yourself.
That's the part nobody talks about.
Because the real consequences aren't always external. Sometimes the consequence is becoming someone you don't recognize, someone you don't respect, someone you don't want to be.
That's deep.
There are conversations from 10 years ago I barely remember. But I still remember moments when I wasn't proud of who I was. Not because I lost control of the situation, because I lost control of myself. And those are completely different things.
Can I share something embarrassing?
Absolutely. Those are usually the best stories.
Years ago, I got into an argument online, which already tells you how the story ends.
Never a good sign.
Never. Anyway, someone said something ridiculous. I got offended. They got offended. I wrote a response. Then another. Then another.
The modern human experience.
Exactly. And then I had this weird moment. I looked at the clock. 3 hours gone. My mood destroyed. My evening ruined. And suddenly I thought, what exactly am I winning here?
That's such an important question. Because sometimes the cost of winning is too high.
Exactly. Even if I somehow convinced that person, which I didn't, I still lost. I lost peace. I lost time. I lost perspective.
And that's where calm becomes valuable. Because calm asks a different question.
That's such a mature way to look at life.
It's a painful way to look at life. Because most people learn it through experience. Nobody wakes up at 18 with perfect emotional discipline. Life teaches it, usually through embarrassment, usually through regret, usually through consequences.
Can I tell you something I've noticed about people I admire?
Please,
The older and wiser they become, the less interested they seem in proving themselves.
100%. Because eventually you realize something. The people who matter don't need constant proof. And the people who demand constant proof usually can't be satisfied anyway.
Wow, that's good.
Think about it. When you're insecure, every disagreement feels personal, every criticism feels threatening, every misunderstanding feels like an attack. But confidence changes that. Real confidence. Not Instagram confidence. Not performative confidence. Actual confidence. It allows you to say, that's okay if they disagree. That's okay if they don't understand. That's okay if they don't approve.
And that's freedom.
Exactly. Because freedom isn't controlling everybody else's opinion. Freedom is not being controlled by it. Pause. And maybe that's what calm really is. Not the absence of emotion, not the absence of conflict, not the absence of stress. It's the ability to remain yourself in the middle of all three.
You know what's funny? When I was younger, I thought calm people were boring.
That's hilarious.
No, seriously. If somebody wasn't reacting, wasn't arguing, wasn't making a big deal out of everything, I assumed they didn't care.
A lot of people think that.
Now I think the exact opposite. Now I think emotional control might be one of the rarest skills in the world.
I agree. Because anybody can react. Anybody can get offended. Anybody can lose their temper. Anybody can follow their emotions wherever they lead. But staying grounded when everything inside you wants to react, that's rare. That's strength. That's discipline. And honestly, that's where calm starts becoming something much deeper than a personality trait. It becomes a way of life. And in the next part, we're going to talk about one of the biggest misunderstandings people have about calm. Because calm is not what most people think it is. It's not emotional suppression. It's not numbness. It's not pretending everything is okay. And understanding that difference might change the way you see yourself forever.
Can I ask everybody listening something?
I was hoping you would.
Seriously, I'm curious. What's one situation where staying calm completely changed the outcome? Maybe it was an argument. Maybe it was a breakup. Maybe it was a work situation. Maybe it was just one moment where you almost reacted and then didn't.
That's a great question. Because I think most people have a story like that. A moment where one breath saved them from a decision they would have regretted.
And if someone came to mind while you were listening today, send this episode to them. Sometimes the right conversation arrives at exactly the right time. You know what's interesting? I think this is where a lot of people get confused. Because when they hear the word calm, they picture somebody who never gets upset, never gets angry, never gets hurt. Basically, a monk sitting on a mountain somewhere. It really does. And if conversations like this help you slow down, think differently, or just feel a little more grounded, consider subscribing, because this is exactly what we do here. And who knows, your story might be exactly what somebody else needs to hear today. Exactly, and honestly, we'd love to hear those stories. So if you're listening on YouTube, leave us a comment. We read way more of them than people probably realize.
And some of the best insights don't come from us. They come from the people listening. Because everybody's learning different lessons from different experiences.
And who knows, your story might be exactly what somebody else needs to hear today.
Also, if you've been enjoying this conversation so far, thank you. Seriously. There are a lot of podcasts out there, a lot of videos, a lot of things competing for your attention. So the fact that you're spending part of your day with us means a lot.
It really does. And if conversations like this help you slow down, think differently, or just feel a little more grounded, consider subscribing, because this is exactly what we do here.
No hype, no shouting, no pretending we've got life completely figured out. Just honest conversations about becoming a little wiser, a little calmer, and hopefully a little better every week.
And if someone came to mind while you were listening today, send this episode to them. Sometimes the right conversation arrives at exactly the right time. You know what's interesting? I think this is where a lot of people get confused. Because when they hear the word calm, they picture somebody who never gets upset, never gets angry, never gets hurt. Basically, a monk sitting on a mountain somewhere.
Yeah, and that's probably the biggest misconception about calm, because calm is not the absence of emotion. It's not emotional numbness. It's not pretending everything is okay. And it's definitely not becoming some kind of human robot.
Thank goodness, because if that's the goal, I'm out.
Same. Honestly, if being calm meant never feeling anything, I wouldn't want it.
Really?
Of course. Think about it. The goal isn't to feel less, the goal is to suffer less. Huge difference.
Wow, that's good. The goal isn't to feel less, the goal is to suffer less.
Because emotions are part of being alive. You want to feel joy. You want to feel excitement. You want to fall in love. You want to care deeply about things. The problem isn't emotion. The problem is becoming controlled by emotion.
So, what's the difference between calm and suppression? Because people mix those up all the time.
Great question. Suppression is when you push emotions underground. Calm is when you acknowledge them without surrendering to them.
Give me an example.
Okay, imagine somebody insults you. Suppression says, I'm not angry. Even though you're furious, calm says, I'm angry. But I'm not going to let anger make this decision.
Oh, that's a completely different thing.
Exactly. One denies reality, the other accepts reality and chooses wisdom anyway.
That's powerful. Because calm people still feel everything. They just don't hand over the steering wheel.
That's my favorite way to think about it. Feelings can ride in the car, they just shouldn't be driving.
Especially fear.
Especially fear. Fear is a terrible driver. Fear drives too fast, makes bad decisions, and constantly assumes the worst.
Can I ask you something personal?
Sure,
Emma, when did you start becoming calmer? Because from the stories you've told, it sounds like you weren't exactly born this way.
not even close. Honestly, I was incredibly reactive when I was younger.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Everything felt personal. Every criticism, every disagreement, every rejection, every misunderstanding. I carried everything.
I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Absolutely. When you're younger, your identity feels fragile. You're still figuring out who you are, so every challenge feels threatening. Every disagreement feels like an attack. Every criticism feels like proof that you're not enough.
That's so true. Because you're not protecting your opinion, you're protecting your identity.
Exactly. And that creates a lot of emotional chaos because if every disagreement threatens who you are, you're going to spend your whole life fighting.
So, what changed?
Life. Honestly, just life. Failure changed me. Heartbreak changed me. Embarrassment changed me. Regret changed me.
Can you explain that?
Sure, at some point I noticed a pattern. Every major regret in my life had one thing in common: a reaction. Not a response, a reaction. A text I shouldn't have sent. A conversation I shouldn't have escalated. A decision I shouldn't have rushed. A bridge I shouldn't have burned.
Wow. That's actually true for most of my regrets, too.
Exactly. And eventually, I realized something. Emotional chaos is expensive, very expensive. Every overreaction costs something. Sometimes it's time, sometimes it's peace, sometimes it's opportunity, sometimes it's a relationship. But it always costs something.
That's a powerful way to think about it. Every reaction has a price tag.
Exactly. And eventually, you get tired of paying.
You know what I've noticed?
What's that?
The calmest people I know usually aren't the people who had easy lives. They're the people who had difficult lives and learned from them.
I completely agree because pain can do two things. It can make you bitter or it can make you wiser.
And calm people choose wisdom.
Usually after making plenty of mistakes. Let's be honest, nobody becomes wise accidentally. Wisdom is expensive. Wisdom is tuition paid to reality.
That's another quote.
It's true, though. Most wisdom comes from consequences, not books, not podcasts, not motivational videos, consequences.
That's painfully accurate.
Can I tell you something that changed my life?
Please.
I stopped needing the last word.
That's a superpower.
It really is, and it's surprisingly difficult because the ego loves the last word.
The ego loves winning.
Not at all. Sometimes people misunderstand you. Sometimes they disagree. Sometimes they walk away thinking they're right. And here's the uncomfortable truth: you have to let them.
And real life doesn't work that way.
Very hard, but incredibly freeing. Because once you stop needing everybody to agree with you, you become much harder to disturb.
That's hard.
Very hard, but incredibly freeing. Because once you stop needing everybody to agree with you become much harder to disturb.
I love that. Once you stop needing everybody to agree with you, you become much harder to disturb.
Because disagreement stops feeling like danger. It becomes normal, expected, even healthy.
Can I tell you what I think is one of the most underrated signs of confidence?
Go ahead.
A pause.
Absolutely.
Seriously. Someone asks a difficult question. Most people rush to answer. They fill the silence. They panic. They start talking before they've actually thought.
And calm people do something different. They pause.
Exactly. And somehow that pause feels powerful.
Because it is powerful. Rushing communicates anxiety. Pausing communicates control.
Wow, that's simple but true.
Think about the most confident people you've met. They usually speak a little slower, move a little slower, think a little longer. Not because they're less intelligent, because they're less afraid.
That's such an interesting distinction.
Fear rushes. Confidence doesn't have to.
Can I share an observation?
Always.
The people who intimidate me the most today are completely different from the people who intimidated me 10 years ago.
How so?
10 years ago, it was the loud people, the successful people, the charismatic people, the people who seemed larger than life. Now, it's the calm people.
Interesting. Why?
Because they seem free. You can't embarrass them easily. You can't provoke them easily. You can't manipulate them easily. They don't seem desperate for approval. And honestly, that's rare.
That's because their emotional state isn't controlled by the room, it's controlled by them. And that's real freedom.
You know what? That might be the best definition of freedom I've ever heard.
Which one?
Not being controlled by things outside of you.
Exactly. Most people think freedom is doing whatever you want, but real freedom is not being owned by your impulses, not being owned by your fears, not being owned by your anger, not being owned by somebody else's opinion. That's freedom.
Okay, let's get practical. If somebody listening right now wants to become calmer, what's the first thing they should do?
Make your reactions slower. That's it. Start there.
Really? Just that?
Just that. Delay your reactions. Not forever, just a little.
Explain.
Somebody sends you an annoying text. Wait 10 minutes. Someone criticizes you. Take one deep breath before responding. Someone says something offensive. Pause. That's all. You're creating space. And space is where wisdom lives.
I love that. Space is where wisdom lives.
Because it is. The problem is, most people never create any emotion, reaction, emotion, reaction, emotion, reaction, emotion, reaction, all day long. No space, no awareness, no choice.
You know what I find encouraging?
What's that?
Everything we're talking about sounds trainable.
It absolutely is. Calm isn't a personality trait, it's a skill, and skills improve with practice.
Which means nobody is disqualified.
Exactly. You don't have to be naturally patient, you don't have to be naturally confident, you don't have to be naturally calm, you just have to practice, one moment at a time. One breath at a time, one decision at a time.
Before we finish, I want to ask you one last question.
Okay.
What was the biggest lesson you learned from all of this? All the mistakes, all the growth, everything. What's the lesson? Long pause.
Honestly, I learned that peace is not something you find, it's something you stop interrupting.
The quiet kind.
Most of the chaos in our lives isn't happening right now. It's happening in our heads. We're arguing with memories, replaying conversations, imagining future disasters, carrying old resentment, fighting battles that ended years ago. And then we wonder why we feel exhausted.
That's so true. Life is happening in front of us, but we're living somewhere else. Jake, 121.
Exactly. And maybe becoming calm isn't about becoming a different person. Maybe it's about coming back to the present again and again and again,
One breath at a time.
one breath at a time,
One pause at a time.
one pause at a time.
One choice at a time.
Exactly. Because anybody can react, anybody can lose control, anybody can follow emotion wherever it leads. But staying grounded when everything inside you wants to react, that's a different kind of strength,
The quiet kind.
the rare kind.
And maybe the kind the world needs most right now.
I couldn't agree more. Thanks for listening, everybody. Take care of yourselves.
Protect your peace.
Protect your energy.
And remember, stay calm. We'll see you next time. Before we go, I want to leave everyone with one final question.
I like where this is going.
Do you think calm is something you're born with, or something life teaches you?
That's a good one, because I know my answer. Life definitely taught me, usually the hard way.
Same here, and we'd genuinely love to hear your answer. So let us know in the comments. Were you born calm, or did life teach you?
And if you're still working on it, don't worry. Most of us are,
Including us.
especially us.
Thanks for spending this time with us.
Take care of yourselves, protect your peace,
Protect your energy.
and remember, you don't have to be perfect to be calm. You just have to keep practicing, one breath at a time. We'll see you next week.